Hi, I'm Andrew Duvall, course designer for Innova Disc Golf, and today I'm here to share with you our latest project, which was the Mauka Disc Golf Course located in Hawaii. So right out of the gate, our first objective was how do we make hole 1 feel as much like traditional disc golf as possible? When we started this in 2018, it was a disc golf overlay on 9 holes of golf, but the disc golf actually ended up outperforming the golf sales, so they dedicated all this space to disc golf. So it was paramount with that opportunity that the first hole feel like traditional disc golf. You're shot shaping, you're throwing through the trees, and a gauntlet was a great way to do that and set the tone and set the pace for the rest of the course. Hole 2, I think this is a really good opportunity to point out an important design concept, and that's holes not only need to work in and of themselves, but they need to fit their role and balance out with the rest of the course. Hole 1 we used to create a traditional wooded gauntlet that's pretty tight. Hole 3 is going to be your first power shot with a lot of danger. So hole 2 is really that chance to warm up and throw your good shots and get loose while still navigating a tricky green. This is it. This is the signature hole. There's not a doubt in my mind. This is why you should come to Hawaii to play disc golf. Hole 3 at the Mauka is a perfect representation of the theme of Mauka and playing towards the mountain. It's big, it's bad, it's beautiful, it's downhill, it's over the water. It's also a really good chance to point out what I think is as important of a part of designing as any other, and that's designing holes that create emotions in people. You want people stepping up on the tee and have feelings stirred up inside them. Equal parts anxiety for what could go wrong and excitement for what could go right, and I think hole 3 here nails that. Hole 4 is a great chance to highlight the short par 3. I think these work especially well after holes where you've thrown just about as hard as you can. It's a good change of pace and a good challenge for players to throw a formidable drive and then have to find a way to throw a touch shot with most likely the slowest disc in their bag. You add a little water and a green that slopes away, and hole 4 is going to bite you more times than you would think a 250-foot hole would. Hole 5 at the Mauka, this is just a good wooded disc golf hole. It's beautiful. It features the water on your left, which you're really trying to stay away from, but if you do that too much, you're going to end up in the schnarb on your right. The fairway pinches as you go, and the basket gets closer and closer to the water the more you try to get that birdie. It's a beautiful green, it's a beautiful hole, and really represents what we were trying to do out here, which was create more disc golf feeling holes. Hole 6 at the Mauka is our first par 4. For me, I find it's very tough to design good par 4s. The more shots you add to a hole, the harder it is to design. I think good par 4s essentially break down into 2 good par 3s. What we tried to do here was create the first shot of that as a basket would be on top of this hill and you're trying to get there. The less you are up the hill, the less you can see where you're trying to go on the second shot, which is playing into these 3 beautiful rocks. Again, sometimes I think you just pick out what makes sense and what works and what's available, and a disc catcher placed between 3 beautiful lava rocks is a great way to cap off the first par 4. Hole 7 at the Mauka, this is our first split route hole, and it kind of pairs up nicely with hole 13. They're both splits, but they play opposite of each other. 7 has the high side on the left and the low ceiling on the right, and 13 does the opposite of that. 7 kind of opens the section of the course that gets a little more open, gets a little more distance, and 13 closes that off. So it's cool when you get the opportunity to create holes that work in tandem. Hole 8 at the Mauka, there were 2 holes that remained from the original design, and this was one of them. This affectionately became known as Cook's Tunnel. All these trees you're flying by are known as Cook's Pines, and they came from people who sailed to the island. These trees are very wind resistant and grow really straight, really fast. which were perfect for building mast for ships, and also perfect for building disc golf fairways. This is just a great gauntlet hole. This is something you would see in the woods of the Carolinas, and I think gauntlet holes, you step up, do or die, get the birdie or not, and if your course can have one, I think it's always a good fit. Hole 9 at the Mauka is a good chance to point out a couple things you can do when you just have a lot of open space. We put a couple mandos on the 2 trees by the tee. This was to frame it up. It's not meant to be punitive. It just keeps people throwing shot shapes through trees, which I think is always a good thing. The second thing we did was use a differential cut. It lowers maintenance. It's really aesthetically pleasing. And physically, it shouldn't do anything to change your shot shaping. But there's something mental about a differential cut that makes people throw the shape of the cut. And I think that works really well here on 9. Hole 10 at the Mauka is a good chance to highlight the rhythm of a disc golf course. It sits between 2 of the longer holes on the course, both par 4s, and it's a downhill short par 3. I think there's more to variety than just straight and hyzer and anhyzer, but you have to look at throwing a driver, throwing a mid, throwing a putter, and here's a good chance to throw a putter instead of a driver off the tee. I believe hole 11 at the Mauka represents the most elevation change, particularly in multiple directions. It's not just up to down or down to up, but it starts high and goes into this valley, and then you spend the rest of this hole climbing back out up towards the basket. The other cool thing it does is it's constantly rolling, so you never really have a flat-footed position, which I think is a good thing to test every once in a while on a disc golf course. Hole 12 at the Mauka is another one of these holes that contends for the best view on the course. You have this beautiful mountain range on your left. Playing disc golf in a manicured setting with views for days I think is always a good time. It also has a tricky green. The basket sits between these 3 big trees. I think it's really important to design greens that challenge the way you putt, whether that's straddling or getting on a knee, doing something different than you usually do. We talked about hole 7 earlier being the opening of the open section of the course, and 13 is kind of the closing. It is also the opposite of 7. 13 has the low ceiling on the left and the high ceiling on the right, and it's kind of working its way back into the woods, and I think it does a good job representing the direction the course is going. It's going to be a little bit tougher and a little more wooded. It also does a good job with having a feature. I think sprinkling in some flavor is always a good idea, and the hanging basket nails that. We've talked a lot about the experience and the feeling you get when you step up to a tee pad, and 14 is one of the most heightened experiences on the course. Anytime you have tight gaps to face right away, the nerves kick in, and I think it's good to make people feel a lot of pressure at least once on a disc golf course. Hole 15 at the Mauka, I believe is one of my favorites. I think it's just a fun disc golf hole. You have to come out of this chute and you're trying to kind of place yourself where you're not at the bottom of this hill. Throwing further isn't necessarily the right choice. Then the second shot comes into this green that features this incredible diversity of trees and has to be one of the prettiest on the course. Again, there's some guardian trees that make approaching and putting more fun and more interesting. 15 is just a solid hole all the way around. Hole 16 really flips the script from the rhythm of the rest of the holes coming in and coming after. It's one last chance to play a hole where distance is not that important. It's all about picking the right disc, throwing the right shape, and controlling the speed all the way in as the green slopes away. It's a really good change of pace hole before you head into the final 2. While hole 3 is the signature hole at the Mauka, and it definitely is the signature hole, hole 17 is a close runner-up. This was the other hole that survived from the original design, and I think when you think of a hole 17, this is exactly what you think of. What I want to point out here is how much room there is to play safe, and I think that's really important. If you're forced to throw at the basket, there's no chance to be courageous. You have to do it. But it creates that what if factor in the decision making when you could have played safe but you didn't, and that makes all the difference. So we started with the idea that this is not a disc golf overlay on a golf course. This is disc golf. It is now dedicated disc golf, and we really wanted to finish with that same idea. Hole 18 plays through these woods, going by all these big beautiful trees that have been there forever. And your second shot, even though it's more open, you still have to navigate one more giant defender to get it close to the basket. We tried to make it visible to the golf course so golfers could see what disc golf is all about and experience it too and gain an appreciation. It's a big, beautiful finisher to a great course. This is destination disc golf at its finest, and if you're looking for a place to go travel to play, I think the Mauka Disc Golf Course is worthy of your time and your effort.